this morning I went out to the property to just take a look, and I was like, maybe I could fix the dozer, or I don't know what. I was just figured I'd go out there and take a look at the thing. And I took a look at the thing, and the hydraulic hose line on the front end of the dozer is some cheap aftermarket, like a $15 hose. And so that kind of made me upset because I got all these things I got to get done. I got two big jobs that I'm working on right now. I have to clear two big fields. I have to clear two major fields, and I rented out a John Deere dozer. I paid a lot of money for it, and turns out the hydraulic hose line on the front end of the dozer is some cheap aftermarket, some aftermarket non, it's some worthless part. And so that kind of made me upset because I was like, it makes the company look bad, right? I mean, it makes the company look bad. You got this company with this dozer, and they're leasing it out, they're renting it out, and they've obviously had this problem before, or they wouldn't have put an aftermarket hose line on the dozer, on the hydraulic piston, and they put some cheap hydraulic line on the dozer blade, and it blew up. So yeah, I'm gonna get a contact. I'm gonna get in contact with them tomorrow morning, and I'm gonna tell them what happened, and I'm gonna get myself an extra day on that dozer. I'm effectively just I need to get that dozer fixed for me to get everything situated. Here within the next month, I will be getting everything put together at the same time. I will be growing the grass, and when I grow the grass, I will also utilize an herbicide on the fertilizer, so that I can herbicide and fertilize at the same time. And then I'll be bulldozing more land tomorrow. I'll either get them to swap the dozer out for me and get me a new one, or just have them send a mechanic in to just replace the hose line with a new one. And that's gonna be that. I'll tell them that I probably lost a couple of gallons of hydraulic fluid too, so I'll tell them about that. Tomorrow, I would reasonably anticipate that I get everything back on track and the dozer's fixed. And I have about I still got to do some work on my first field. I was looking to have all of that done by today, and then I was gonna go and start on my second field tomorrow. But with the dozer breaking down, I'm probably behind schedule about a day. So I'll be starting on the new field on about Tuesday, and tomorrow I will be spending time to really clear out that first field. And that first field is just about good to go. My whole big thing about the first field is that if I have any really, really, really big patches of some honey locust trees or some real bad mesquite trees, I'm gonna push them out of the way. And I'm looking to clear a whole perimeter around the property, so that I can walk around the property very easily, so that I can check the fence of the property, right? It's very important. I need to be able to check the fence of the property. If I cannot see what's going on with the fence of the property, that is a very big hassle, all right? It's one of those things that'll keep you up at night. If you don't know exactly, how your fences are, if you don't know exactly what's going on with your fence, it'll keep you up at night, okay? It's very worrisome. And so I want to clear my entire fence line and get the fence picked. I have a couple of parts of the fence. I have two parts of the fence that I have seen right now that the fence is effectively on the ground. Like, I can just walk over it, and it's effectively just on the ground. The material is not broken and is not damaged and is not bad material. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but the fence fell over. And so if I get the guy out there to fix the fence, he probably doesn't need to buy anything. He can just take the material that's already there and just fix the fence. So it probably won't cost very much. And I'm gonna have the guy bring in a skid steer. He probably needs to have the skid steer anyway to fix the fence. He probably needs it anyway. And then I'm gonna have him clear whatever little bit is in the way. If anything is in the way of the fence, he can just clear the rest of it, and and then I'll be good to go. So when it starts to rain, when it looks like it's about to start raining, I will herbicide, I will fertilize, I will have the fence fixed, and then I will start liquidating cattle, and I will start reinvesting the earnings to expand my business. I will start all of that here I would anticipate that it's going to be about 3 weeks. I've been watching some weather forecasting stuff, and they're saying that the fall in my area for Central Texas, the fall is going to come in pretty early this year, and we may be in for a cold winter. I'm reading that we may be in a, I'm looking at this whole situation, and the weather forecasters are saying that for my area, we may be in for a colder winter this year. So, got to get ready for that. So everything will be ready to go here in about 3 weeks. I'll be herbiciding, I'll be fertilizing the grass, and then the fence will be fixed. I have a bunch of cattle right now. I will start liquidating the animals. I will start reinvesting the earnings. I will start expanding the herd, and I would anticipate that Tuesday I will be out on the big property and clearing the big property, the 180, 190 acre property. I'll start clearing that one on Tuesday. And so right now, that's everything that I got on the schedule. And so I would, and here's the thing, I was actually thinking about this, but over the next 3 or 4 months, something like that, I'll probably end up doing about $100,000. It'll probably be about $100,000. I'll probably end up making about $100,000. Okay. And so the thing about all of this is that I'll probably bring in about $100,000. And here's a very an honest way to look at it. And here's a very I think it's an interesting way to look at it. And this was something I was thinking about, and I was like, the whole thing about $2,000 a month. In all honesty, for effectively everybody on the planet, if you made an extra $2,000 a month, this is also what I mean by, there's a very real possibility that making an extra $2,000 a month will legitimately solve 90% of your problems. Granted that you're not an idiot. Okay, if you're an idiot, there is no amount of money that will solve any problem. And here's and I was thinking about this, and I was like, well, because the whole thing about, when I speak about investing, I don't see investing as a way of saving money. This whole idea about saving money, I do not see investing as saving money. I see investing as an opportunity to make money with my money. All right, this is a huge I think it's a huge mind shift, like mental shift about how to perceive, how do I see things, right? How do I perceive the things in my life? How do I see things? Because it is what it is, all right? I've always said that at the end of the day, I do very well for myself. It's not some debatable thing. When it comes to money, I do very well for myself. Okay? I'm not in any sort of financial a financial problem at all. If any, my money, the amount of money that I'm making is actually going upwards, compounding, and it's going upwards, it's going upwards. My income is already very high, and I'm not going to say my income is high. The amount of money that I make is very high. The amount of money that I keep. I've always said that in terms of, the whole thing about how I see it, in terms of money, income and revenue and these things, they're kind of arbitrary numbers, all right? They don't really matter. None of these things really matter. At the end of the day, what really matters is how much money do you keep at the end of the day. That's what matters, okay? Whatever other money metric is just kind of whatever. All right, and the direction that your money is going is also very important. So it's like if you have a person, and I used Mr. Earl as a very realistic example of this, right? He has $1 million worth of stocks. He makes $12 an hour at his job. He's grown this investment portfolio. And in all honesty, when you take a look at what kind of stocks he has, right? Like he has a lot of Coca-Cola shares. And he has whatever else, you can pretty much be guaranteed, something like Coca-Cola, if you include the dividend, he's probably going to make 7 or 8% on that stock, and he's got other investments. And so, when you take a look at an investment portfolio like that, and it's worth whatever, right? If you have $1 million worth of stocks, and you're making, 8% return on that, that's $80,000 a year. He's got a house that he's already paid for. He's already paid off his house, right? I mean, he's got whatever. He's got his job and he's making $12 an hour on that. I mean, Mr. Earl don't got nothing to worry about. That's the whole thing about money, is that the big goal about money is not about the amount of money you make. The amount of money you make, and realistically at a certain point the money doesn't even do anything. Granted that you're not looking to do like ultra wealthy things, and if you're looking to do like ultra wealthy things, you're honestly going to have to start making, I'm not even going to call it ultra wealthy, because I've always said that to enter the realm of wealth, you honestly probably need to start generating, you honestly probably need to start bringing home about $10 million a year to enter the realm of wealth. But then once you've entered the realm of wealth, there is like the beginnings of wealth, there is the middle stage of wealth, and then there is like the ultra wealthy, right? So there are even in the category of wealth, there are different categories of wealth. But if you're looking to legitimately do like wealthy things, like like have a private jet or whatever it is, then you probably need to bring home about $10 million a year, and your income would probably also, not your income, but the amount of money that you bring home would also probably have to be going upwards. Still, even at $10 million a year, your income will still have, the amount of money that you are bringing home at the end of the year will still have to be going upwards. All right, that's when you enter wealth, enter the area of wealth. Everything else, though, if you make, and the very realistic way to look at this is like, I was actually sitting there thinking about this, and if I intentionally went out of my way, let's say that, let's say, let's say that I can scrape $15,000 off of my business a month, and if I scrape $15,000 a month off of my business, it doesn't do anything to my business. It doesn't make my business go. It doesn't make my business shrink, but it doesn't make my business grow. So my business won't be growing and my business won't be shrinking, but my business will be running sideways, and I will be pulling $15,000 a month off my business, right? So let's say instead of paying myself 15 grand, let's say I paid myself 2 grand. Not going to say I paid myself, because I pay myself whatever I need, okay? I do pay myself whatever I need. But let's say that I intentionally went out of my way to spend an extra $2,000 a month. What could I do with that 2 grand? Even if I went and bought myself a brand new F-350, right? I went and bought myself a brand new F-350. That would be like less than $1,000 a month, right? Let's say I traded in my truck and I went and I bought myself a brand new F-350. That wouldn't even be $1,000 a month. So I would still have another $1,000 that I could do and as of this point in time, the way that my life is right now, I can effectively just do whatever already. All right, I don't, like if I want to go and I want to, eat some food, I'm not concerned about it, right? If it's whatever, right? If I want to drink some kombucha, I drink kombucha, all right? Like, I'm not worried about it. It doesn't, as of right now, paying myself more money won't really do anything. It won't do anything. I can already afford to go to restaurants when the whole thing, like a lot of times when you watch some of these poor people, one of the big things they complain about is that they don't have money to do anything. They can't go out to eat at a restaurant. They can't whatever, right? Me, I can go to a restaurant whenever I feel like it. All right, I can go to a restaurant whenever I feel like it. I don't need more money to do that. All right, I already pay myself whatever I need at the end of the month. And if I was going to intentionally spend another $2,000 a month on top of that, there would be no way for me to do it. It would not be possible for me to do it. Even if I went and bought myself a brand new F-350, that wouldn't even be $1,000 a month. This is also why I encourage this, very, very, very heavily, right? Raise your income by $2,000 a month. If you legitimately get yourself into a situation where you are, systematically going to put yourself in a financially better situation, you have taken a look at your money through an objective lens. At least you're not going into the negative. You are not convincing yourself to be poor, right? That's one of the biggest things that most people can do. Because, and the whole thing about this is that, like, if I was in a room with 200 random people, I can almost guarantee it. If I was in a room with 200 people and we took these 200 people out of whatever, a Costco, a Walmart, wherever it may be, I took 200 random people and we put them all in a room, you can almost be guaranteed that 75% of that room, 75% are either at zero at the end of the year, they are borderline at zero, or they may even be going into the negative every single year. They are slowly digging themselves into a hole over a long period of time. All right, almost 75%. Chances are, I have not found anybody else to this day that's just like, you know what, I start my own business. I just go onto a piece of land. I bulldoze a bunch of trees. I fertilize grass. I herbicide it. I fix the fence. I start myself an LLC, and then I buy myself a bunch of cattle, and I run these cattle on grass. I raise them to a commercial standard, and when I do that, I effectively just become a value-add commodity trader, and then I store my wealth and my assets. I have not met anybody else to this day that does anything like this. All right, I have not seen it. All right, I have not met anybody that does anything like this, not to this day. Okay, and so I'm not bragging about it. I'm just being very honest about it. I don't know anybody else that does anything like this. All right, I do very well for myself. I make a lot of money. I do very well for myself. I'm not concerned about it. I do very well for myself. And my income is actually going upwards. But if I went and I paid myself an extra, if I legitimately forced myself to spend an extra $2,000 a month, I couldn't even do it. All right, I couldn't even do it. It's not even possible. For me to legitimately do that, I mean, if I went and I legitimately bought myself a brand new F350 and I traded in my F350, and I traded in my F150 and I bought myself a brand new F350, I mean, that's not even $1,000 a month. All right, maybe we're talking $700 a month. It might even be as low as $400 a month. I'm not even entirely sure, right? It's not even possible. It's not, for me to spend an extra $2,000 a month, it's not even possible. Borderline not possible. Like, I would have to go and do like ridiculous things. All right, I don't even know. Like, I don't even know. How do you even spend? How would I even spend an extra $2,000 a month? I don't even know. It's not even possible. And this is also what I mean by almost everybody. Almost everybody in the entire, on the entire planet, if you made an extra $2,000 a month, it would more or less solve all of your financial problems. Are you going to be wealthy by doing that? No, you're not. All right. Are you going to be broke? Probably. All right. But at least you're not going into the negative, right? And I would hope that just because you started making a little bit extra money, you did not throw yourself off a cliff. Okay. You can't save an idiot from themselves. It's not possible. All right. By the time, if you become an idiot, you are going to be an idiot. You're going to die poor. There's no saving that. All right. But in terms of a realistic perspective, making an extra $2,000 a month, it will probably save you from being poor. It won't save you from being poor if you're an idiot. But if you're in the negative, it will at least keep you at broke. It will keep you at broke. And the good thing about being broke is at least you're not going the wrong way. All right. Going from broke to doing well for yourself financially is going to take a monumental amount of effort, and you will not be able to do it overnight. It's not like you're gambling and looking to win the lottery. All right. Legitimately going from being broke to being wealthy is going to take a long time. Going from being broke to even being rich is going to take a long time. All right. You're not going to go from being poor to being broke, and then from being broke to being rich in the next 6 months. Okay. You're not going to do that. That's not how it works. All right. If you do manage to go from being poor to being broke, the next step at that point would be from going to broke to doing well for yourself, all right? And going from broke to doing well for yourself, you really need to understand an asset. If you don't have any kind of an asset strategy, you're probably not going to be able to do it, all right? You need to figure out a way to make money on an asset. You need to figure out how to make money with your money. If you don't understand this idea of making money with your money, you're not going to make it, all right? I can almost guarantee it. The whole idea of working for money is not going to save you. All right, you'll get taxed very heavily. You're just not going to be able to make much money. All right, you really want to start making money with your assets. You really want to start thinking about making money with your money. That's the big idea. All right, that's the big idea. And when you're able to do that, that's how you go from being just, whatever, average. That's how you go from being broke to doing well for yourself. But a lot of people are in the situation where you're broke or you're poor, and there's a very real possibility that you're fiddle farting around between being broke and being poor all the time. You're just constantly kind of going back and forth between the one or the other. And in an honest way to look at this is, if I was put in a room with 200 people, 100 of those people would either be, like 100 to 150 of those people would either have zero money left over at the end of the year, or they would be in the negative. It's very rare to find somebody who is just astronomically in the positive, all right? It's very rare. It very rarely ever happens. I do very well for myself. I'm astronomically in the positive. I'm not, slowly losing money or anything. And, and the whole thing, with my situation is that over the next year or so, I am looking to invest a large amount of capital. I've taken a look at my different circumstances. I've taken a look at different circumstances that I believe that could realistically occur, and I've prepared myself to effectively just do what is necessary to keep my whole thing is that I don't ever risk bankruptcy. All right, this is the thing about me. This is one of my things. I don't ever risk losing money. I don't risk losing money. I don't even joke about it. I don't risk losing money. All right, I don't. All right, if I'm going to take any leverage, I will only do so when I have an asset that I have stabilized that I can leverage against. That's the only time that I will ever do it. All right, I don't ever risk losing money. All right, and the whole thing about my business is that I have people that I do business with that are that I am responsible. I am going to be held accountable for holding my end of the deal. All right, so I got people that I do business with that I have made a deal with. I've taken a look at these people, and I'm not saying that they're a saint. They're not a saint, but we made a deal, and I'm going to hold my end of the deal. They're not a saint. I don't see them as a saint. I don't see them as some wonderful individual. I'm not their friend. All right, I'm not their buddy pal. I'm not going on a magical journey with any of these people. I made a deal with them, and so I will hold my end of the deal. I will hold myself accountable for my end of the deal. I will be looking to push my business forward, and I will hold my end of the deal. All right, I will hold myself accountable for my end of the deal. So, I got a lot going on. I realistically, I've taken a look at it. I have a realistic idea of the possible variables that could happen. I don't want to be in a situation where I dump all of my money into the market at the same time. I can't precondition all the animals at the same time, and then the corn market goes skyrocketing. The corn market goes up 10-20%, and the feeder cattle market falls. And then I'm sitting there hemorrhaging money, right? I don't want to be in any of these situations. And so I have a realistic, I've taken a look at it from many different angles, and I have a realistic idea for what I should accomplish and what I will probably, the whole big idea, the objectives that need to be met for me to effectively, stay on track for my business is that by about March of next year, I will have to have about 120 cattle. All right, I will reinvest my capital, and by about March of next year, I will have about 100 to 120 cattle by March of next year. That's one of the objectives that I need to meet. And you need to, the whole thing about this is that uh, I don't leverage myself to the eyeballs to I don't leverage myself to the eyeballs to grow my business. My business is already profitable. I have money in my business. I am going to reinvest that money first. Why would I not reinvest that money first? I will be reinvesting that money first, and I can only precondition so many animals at a time. And it takes time to precondition these animals properly. So all of this stuff is going to take time. I have realistic ideas for what needs to be done. I have taken a look at my overall circumstances, and I have put together a very reasonable business plan. The whole thing about don't dump your money into the market at all at the same time. I will buy into the market very frequently. I will precondition as many animals as I can at a time. There are objectives that need to be met for the preconditioning to happen properly. There are objectives that need to be met to make sure that my business is on track in terms of the amount of growth I'm looking to achieve. And at the end of the day, I'll also make a lot of money too. I'll be making a lot of money. I don't ever risk losing money, okay? I don't risk losing money. All right, there are things that I do not do. Fundamentally, I do not do them because ultimately they will end in losing money. That's why I don't. The whole idea of like, don't buy into the market all at the same time. Don't leverage yourself to the eyeballs. I'm effectively just giving you advice from how I run my business. You have to understand that I actually do this in real life. I work on this thing like 15 hours a day, 7 days a week. This is my entire life. This is legitimately what I do. When it comes down to it, I make more money as a cattleman than anybody on the planet makes doing anything, and it's by a lot. I do very well for myself. All right, I do very well for myself. I make more money as a cattleman than effectively anybody on the planet makes doing just about anything. You could be a doctor and I probably make more money than you. You could be a whatever and I probably make more money than you. I probably do. Almost everybody. All right, and so when I talk about these things, it's just I'm also I'm from a perspective of I actually do this in real life. I am giving you my perspective for whatever it may be. Maybe it'll help you along the way. All right, maybe it'll just give you an interesting way of looking at things from a perspective of I actually did it and I actually do this stuff in real life and I do very well for myself. There are things that I fundamentally do not do because they will end in losing money, like buying into the market all at the same time. Dumping your money into the market or any kind of an investment, dumping all of your money in at one time is a horrible idea. All right, fundamentally it is a horrible idea. The market can move in three directions. It can go up, down, and sideways. And there is a very realistic possibility, like my business, there is a very realistic possibility that the cattle market will go down because there will be a upwards pressure in the corn market. There will probably be upwards pressure in the corn market in within the next 3 years, and I would be prepared to do something like that. I would be prepared to handle something like that by benefiting from the corn market by selling hay. All right, by selling hay, I would benefit from the rise in the corn market, even if the price of cattle goes down. I could probably take their cost of feed negative, and if I trickle into the market, if I buy into the market every 2 weeks or every week, whatever it may be, if I do that, then I don't have to worry about it because my whole thing about it is that I am a cattleman forever. The cattle market is all I do. I'm not interested in doing anything else. I am a cattleman forever. This is what I do. The cattle business is what I do. Okay? And I would reasonably anticipate that over the long course of time, the movement, the long-term average of the cattle market will be in an upwards direction. The long-term outlook of the cattle market will be in an upwards direction, and it will. That's what I reasonably anticipate. And so if I buy into the market every 2 weeks, if I buy into the market every month, I can buy into the market over a long period of time. And as long as I trade the average, I will be in an upwards market. I will not be fighting the current of money. You know, you don't want to be in a situation where you are fighting the current of money, right? Depreciating assets. You don't want to be holding on to depreciating assets. You don't want to be in a situation where you are fighting the current of money. All right, fundamentally, that's one of my big things. You don't want to be fighting the current of money, okay? You know, I would reasonably anticipate that over a long period of time, the cattle market goes in an upwards direction. All right, and so I will benefit from that if I trade the average over the course of all, until kingdom come. If I just trade the average, chances are I will be benefiting from the upwards rise in prices. All right. And so, and if the corn market does go up, cattle prices will probably come down. And if that happens, I can benefit from that because I have such a large amount of land. As of right now, I have a large land mass. I can actually just grow hay and sell it to a wholesaler. And if I make $15 a bale, if I make $10 a bale, I can actually probably take my feed costs negative. All right. Borderline negative, almost zero. Zero to, nearly zero to borderline negative. But there are things that I do not do because they ultimately will end in losing money. And you definitely do not want to be in a situation where you are losing money over a long period of time. That's the worst case scenario. If you are losing money over a long period of time, and my whole thing about it is like, why would you risk losing 20 grand? Why would you risk losing 15, 20, 25 grand? Why would you risk that if you can learn how to do things with 5 grand? Right? Like, you don't need to put money into something to learn how to do something. Like, if you don't know how fertilizer works, you can go to, it's like, and just think about it like this. Imagine, and here's one way to think about it. You can think about it however which way you want. Here's just an interesting way to think about it. And you should think about things, right? You should think about things. Imagine that you have no idea how to grow grass. Imagine that you have no idea how to do it. You've never done it. And then you just woke up one day and you just magically convinced yourself that you're going to grow 1,000 acres, right? Why would you go and grow 1,000 acres of grass if you could just grow 10 acres and see if you can even do it to begin with, right? Because if you grew 10 acres of grass, you could grow 100. And if you could grow 100 acres of grass, you could grow 1,000. And if you grew 10 acres of grass, you would be able to find out within 3 months whether or not you could grow 10 acres of grass. Right? I mean, within 3 months, if you grew 10 acres of grass and you fundamentally understood how to do it, then you could go and grow 100 acres, right? And let's say that you could grow 100 acres and you figured out that 3 months later, it's whatever, right? But you don't want to be in a situation where you leverage yourself to the eyeballs. You go on a magical journey. I don't know why you ended up in the situation where you legitimately believe that you fell out of heaven a 7. You have nothing to show for it. Like, you just woke up one day and you decided that you were going to do it, right? And now you're leveraging yourself to the eyeballs to do it. You see this happen a lot with business owners. You see this happen a lot with business owners, right? For whatever reason, you just woke up one day and you decided that starting a business was going to save your life. And so you leveraged yourself to the eyeballs. You went and started yourself a business, but it turns out you're just kind of an idiot and you're on a magical journey. And, now you're in some, desperate, miserable situation, right? If you legitimately want to run a business, buy one, right? Buy one. Buy one that's already functional. Buy one that's already producing a profit. Pay a multiple of the earnings. Take a look at the growth of the company. Pay a multiple of the earnings. And then call it a day, right? Right? And the only time to ever buy a business, the only time to ever run a business is if you legitimately believe that you can make the business do better. If you don't think that you can make the business do better, then go and do something else, right? Invest in a different business. You can invest in stocks. You can buy real estate. Go and do something else, right? Why would you run a business, right? It's a horrible idea, all right? It's not that great. It's a horrible idea. There are a lot of ways to make money. You don't need to run a business to make money. All right? There's a lot of different ways to make money. But that's the, there are things that I do not do because fundamentally they will lead to losing money. All right? Leveraging yourself to the eyeballs, that's a very realistic way of losing money. That's, there are many ways, okay? There are many ways to lose money. And that's the whole thing, though. It's like, it's like if you legitimately wanted to grow 1,000 acres of grass, let's say, or you wanted to grow 100 acres of grass, why not go and grow 10 acres of grass, right? See if you can even grow 10 acres. If you can grow 10 acres, or if you can't grow 10 acres, you would figure out within 3 months, and in all honesty, it would only cost you $500. Maybe it cost you $750. Maybe you needed 1.5 tons of fertilizer, right? And it's like if you're on a field, if you're on a 10-acre field and you have no idea what's going on in your field and you use the wrong fertilizer, which is probably going to happen. Things like what I do, they don't happen overnight. All right, I spent like 15 hours a day working on this thing for the last 15 years of my life. All right, there's no skipping that. It doesn't matter what you think. All right, and if you want to figure that out, then go and figure it out. I mean, don't lose all your money. I hope you don't lose all your money along the way. There's a very realistic possibility that you do. There's a very realistic possibility that you never make it to the 10% mark your entire life. There's a very realistic possibility of that. All right, it could honestly happen. But if you're growing 10 acres of grass, you would be able to figure out within 3 months whether or not you can even grow that 10 acres of grass, and it would only cost you $500. It would only cost you $750. Go and see if you can even do that. All right, go out and take a look at your field and determine what kind of fertilizer are you going to put on it. Why are you going to put that fertilizer on your field? Do you have an objective reasoning for it, or are you just going to do that fertilizer because Billy Joe Bob told you that it was a good idea? Right? I mean, what is the reasoning? Right? Why are you putting this fertilizer on your field? Do you have an objectively straightforward reason for why you're doing that? All right, see if you can even do that. And if you can grow 10 acres of grass, then you can grow 100, right? If you can grow 100, then you can grow 1,000, right? And you'll figure this out very quickly, and it's not going to take you a lot of money. And you don't want to dump a bunch of money into something and then realize that you can't do it at all and then lose a whole bunch of money. All right, there's no reason to do that. I mean, fundamentally, that's idiocy. That's called losing money. And I don't ever risk losing money. I don't risk losing money. I don't risk bankruptcy. I don't joke with bankruptcy. I don't risk losing money. I don't, all right? I make money.